I'm recording this on a Sunday. Bayonetta 3 was released 2 days ago, I think, for Nintendo Switch. I saw a tweet by John Lineman from Digital Foundry, by the way. He was quoting this person, Nibelion, on Nibel. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. But he mentioned how the early reviews of Bayonetta had different scores, and a lot of them are actually 5 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5, very high scores at the end of the day. Later, I saw a tweet by MBG, which is the modern vintage gamer, and he mentioned how good the game is, but how bad the performance is, and that hardly any reviews called it out. That made me think about the importance of having a good stability in a game and how that is very important to be considered for the final score of a review. Well, there's this game called Dark Souls 1. It's one of my favorite games of all time, maybe one of my top 10 video games. Well, back then, there was an area in the game called Blighttown. Do you remember Blighttown? How bad it was? Well, this video by PG Tech made me remember how absolutely awful, especially for the PS3 version, how awful it was. The game could even drop to the 15 frames. It was so bad. I played the 360 version, so it wasn't as bad as the PS3 version, but still, it was such a bad experience. And I don't remember reviews actually pointing out how bad the performance was. And let me tell you, Blighttown, if you're not familiar with Dark Souls, Blighttown is a very important area in the game. It's a mandatory area that you can kinda skip a big chunk of it, but you still have to deal with Blighttown. It's mandatory. So having this performance in such a large and important area of the game was awful. And it actually made you question why the game had such high reviews, even though the performance was really bad in that area. And I still think Dark Souls 1 is one of my favorite games, but this wasn't a big of a deal in reviews, and some of them actually didn't mention how bad it was. And Dark Souls 1 also had a very bad PC port. This was way before the remastered version, and that was also awful, but that's a story for another day. It is very important to consider the performance of a game in order to give a proper review. And also, that made me think about the difference between reviewing a game on a 4090 or a Xbox Series S, the differences of experiences. That is hardly ever mentioned, and that is actually very important, because obviously reviewing a game at 120 FPS tops or even more, 4K, whatever, and someone playing the same game on a different rig, maybe a low-end, mid-rig, obviously the experience is different, and a game has to be optimized as much as possible. The stability of the games, that's I think is the most important thing to consider. And for games that are actually exclusive, like Bayonetta 3, need to have better performance. That is something you actually require for a game like that is a high character action thingy like Devil May Cry. And while a lot of people might not think of it as a deal breaker, and that's fine, I do think that is something that needs to be pointed out. And if someone is actually being paid for writing or making video reviews of games, I think it's their duty to mention how bad or how good the performance is, and they absolutely should play different versions of the game in order to actually have a general idea of the performance. And no matter who is behind the game, those issues need to be pointed out, because sure, we laughed at Cyberpunk. It's still, I've been playing the game for like 2 weeks now, and still has a lot of issues, and I would never give a perfect score for Cyberpunk. And in the same way, I would never give a perfect score to Elden Ring, because the game also had a lot of issues, and while some of them have been patched out, still the game is not as good as it could be, and having a 60 FPS limit actually hurts the game. So there's a lot of things going on here, and I guess at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that reviewers should consider how bad the performance is of a game, and that should reflect the final score. So having a game like Bayonetta that drops into the 30s and 40s should absolutely not have a 5 out of 5, because Jesus, how is that even possible? So I guess I just wanted to talk about how important it is to actually mention that the the performance in a review. And good stuff from John Lineman and MPG to actually make public how bad the performance is for Bayonetta. And I hope people consider these issues for the future. And I really hope reviews in the future consider all the variables and all the, or at least consider the performance of a game into the review scores. I guess I just wanted to talk about it.